to the 3Ds of advanced care planning, how to decide, discuss, and document your end-of-life wishes. My name is Garrick Colwell, and I'm an advanced care planning educator and co-founder of Kitchen Table Conversations. Kitchen Table Conversations is a nonprofit organization that was created by myself, my late wife Kinsloe, and 20 other healthcare professionals for the purpose of educating people on how to complete their advanced care plan. The third of the 3Ds is document. In this video, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about, how to document your end-of-life wishes so that you, your loved ones, and your healthcare professionals are all on the same page, literally. Before we get started, let's just take a moment here and imagine that we're sitting at the kitchen table about to have an in-depth conversation. We have our favorite beverage handy. We have pen and paper to make notes and to log our questions. And I'd like to ask you at this point just to pause and to download the companion document for this video. It's important that you download this document now because you're going to want to use it to follow along with what we're going to be talking about as we go through each one of your advanced directive. The living will, all the documents that go into the living will, the addendums options you may have or may want to utilize, your medical power of attorney. We'll also be talking about some after-death decisions that you can make now. So the idea is that take a moment, pause, download the document so you're ready, and I'll be here when you get back. Welcome back. We're still at the kitchen table. Let's take a moment to center ourselves, bring our attention to this moment in time. Remember to breathe deeply, and also to give ourselves permission to stop this video at any point in time. It becomes too much information. It's overwhelming. And also give yourself permission to take care, that you will just simply take your time. Whether it's pausing the video or coming back and researching more in detail about the topic, whatever it is that you need to do in order to find your way through this material, just take your time. Be good to yourself. So, advanced directives. Let's review what they are and how we use them. Advanced directives are documents a person completes while still in possession of decisional capacity about how treatment decisions should be made on her or his behalf in the event she or he loses the capacity to make such decisions. They are legal tools directing treatment decision-making and or appointment of a surrogate decision-maker, such as a healthcare proxy or healthcare agent. This means that you're continuing to be able to make decisions for yourself. You're not unconscious, obviously, as you make these decisions and as you create your advanced directives. And this also applies up until the time during illness where you are fully able to verbalize what it is that you want and don't want. It's only at the time that you wind up becoming unconscious or not able to make decisions that your advanced directives are referred to, and your medical power of attorney, your healthcare agent, has a job. So it's important to remember that advanced directives are only acted upon when the patient has lost the ability to make decisions for her or himself. It is important to remember that advanced directives can be revoked orally or in writing by the patient at any time, so long as he or she has maintained decisional capacity. So that's very important. So let's kind of dive into what the advanced directives might look like. And we're going to actually use Texas as an example of the directives. Directives in the state in which you live will be different. They'll look different and they'll have different requirements. So if you're not from the state of Texas, you can find the documents that you need for your advanced directives. Again, your living will, your medical power of attorney, through prepareforyourcare.org. That web address again is prepareforyourcare.org. You can download your state-specific statutory documents that are to be used in the state in which you live for recording your advanced directives. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the details around the directive to physician and family or surrogate, which is also called the living will. We'll review these addendums. These is where you get very, very specific about the type of treatments you do and do not want. We'll also talk about your Texas medical power of attorney for designation of a healthcare agent, which is also referred to as MPOA. We'll visit with out of hospital do not resuscitate order and what that means and why you may or may not want one. We'll also talk about these after death decisions that you can make today and save someone a lot of time, energy, and effort after. So organ donation registration, body disposition authorization, appointment for disposition of remains, and of course, authorization to disclose protected healthcare information. We'll also show you an advanced care planning checklist, a form where you can actually keep track of where you've distributed your advanced directives, and review with you what a when I die file looks like, and of course, additional resources that you may want to look at and to access as time progresses here. So first, we're going to talk about the directive to physician and family or surrogates, which is the living will. And we're going to go through each one of these in particular when it comes to the types of treatments you may or may not want. So let's take a look at the document. This document is directed to physician and family or surrogates. This first section here basically outlines what it is that definitions and how to complete the form itself. This is where it becomes part of the directive piece, which is you put your name here in this section, and then you have to make some decisions based upon whether you have a terminal condition or whether you have an irreversible condition. And the choices are the same in both categories or a state of health. And that basically is, the first one is that I request, this one here, is I request that all treatments other than those needed to keep me comfortable be discontinued or withheld and allow my physician to let me die as gently as possible. Or you can also request that I be kept alive in this terminal condition using available life-sustaining treatment. Choice is yours. Whichever you decide, make sure that you don't just put an X over here in this box or on this line. You initial it and date it. Initial and date it. So everyone knows that was you on this date making the determination as to what your choice was. So a terminal condition obviously is typically someone who's got less than 6 months to live. More than likely has a terminal illness of some sort, perhaps cancer, and which they, or that's clearly known. The doctors have assessed that that's the case, and therefore you say to yourself, well, either I want to be kept comfortable without life-sustaining treatments, or I want to be things to be done, everything can be done possible for life-sustaining treatment to keep me alive as long as possible. Again, no right or wrong answers here, just simply what it is that you choose. It's again, your voice, your choice, your body, your life. It's up to you. So irreversible condition, the same thing is true here. You make a note here or you make a note here. Again, we suggest that you initial and date. Now, if you want to get more specific than these two conditions, if you want to get to a place where you may want to say something about dementia, and we're going to go through these forms so step by step, but there are different provisions that you may want to make in this document that state, I want this type of treatment, or I want that type of treatment, but I don't want this other type of treatment. And here's an example. So on the top of page 2, additional requests, which is where we are right now, this section right here, it says, after discussion with your physician, you may wish to consider listing particular treatments in this space that you do or do not want in specific circumstances, such as artificially administered nutrition and hydration, intravenous antibiotics, etc. Be sure to state whether you do or do not want the particular treatment. And I'm going to show you forms that you can actually use to record what your preferences are. Obviously, there's not enough space in these 3 lines to do so, So what you simply do in these 3 lines is you write in, please see attached addendums. Please see attached addendums. As we scroll down the rest of this document, you can take a look here at this section here. If I do not have a medical power of attorney, and that is not something we suggest you do, and the next documents we'll review will be a medical power of attorney. So if you, for some reason, did not have, and that you weren't going to, then this would be the place to name the person. But if you do not have that person, if you do have them, then don't put anything here. Like it says here, if medical power of attorney has been executed, that an agent has already been named, you should not list any additional names in this document. Otherwise, it becomes confusing for people looking at the document, saying there's one name here and there's another name on the medical power of attorney statutory document for the state of Texas, and that's just confusing everybody. So let's not do that. And then you complete the document, sign it, date it, place your city, sign it here, date, city, county, state of residence. And then 2 competent adults. This actually gives you a detailed explanation as to what a competent adult witness looks like, what their qualifications are. Again, they're actually witnessing your signature, not the content or your decisions. Really, that's none of their business. They don't even need to read the document. All they need to do is witness your signature, that you are who you say you are, as it were, that, this is your signature. Okay, so let's now take a look at definitions. This gives you an opportunity in the 3rd page of this document to get familiar and educated on the definitions of certain words and phrases in the document. Now, let's move on to more specific things that have to do with the type of treatments you do or do not want. And this is what's called an advanced directive addendum. Okay. So this gets very, very specific. Important to read this as part of the download that you just did and you have in your hands now. Get educated, and then let's go ahead and go to the 2nd page here where it talks about decisions for specific therapies. There's 10 of them listed here. And so if my mental and physical state has deteriorated, the prognosis is grave, and there is little chance that I will ever regain mental or physical function, I would like the following. So this is, again, something they'll refer to if, in fact, you become unconscious and not able to speak for yourself. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're informing them as part of your choices when you talk to your doctors in advance. So everyone, and your loved ones as well, obviously your medical power of attorney knows this, should know this quite well also, so that make sure that everyone knows what your intention is. But in this case, you may have a choice of saying, if, as an example, antibiotic, if I develop a life-threatening infection of any kind, I want to say yes, perhaps, no, perhaps, or let's go for a trial period, which is not unusual in a situation like this. You may have an infection and you may want to go on a trial period for 7 days, and if it doesn't clear up and it's kind of gotten ahead of you, and you may just want to let it run its course. So you go down through these 10 and you make a decision as to whether you want yes, a trial period, or no. And if you're not comfortable deciding, you might take this with you when you sit down and talk to your doctor about your end-of-life wishes, and have you guys talk about different scenarios in which this may be applying. As an example, when would there be a situation or a case where I want artificial nutrition, or artificial hydration, or artificial, number 3, artificial ventilation if I stop breathing, or CPR, which is really what number 4 is all about. So these are decisions that you can make for yourself initially, but you also want to confer with your doctor based upon your healthcare situation, what your health condition is, and adjust according to what it is that you may be hearing from your doctor as well. So that's getting very specific on the type of therapies that you may or may not want. In the time of COVID, it's also important for you to have a medical plan in addition to making known what it is your wishes are if in fact you contract COVID. So these pages simply here, several pages here, show you how to walk you through step by step how to get prepared to go to the hospital. And then this set of documents here gives you insight into what it is that you need to know in order to make a determination as to what kind of treatment you may or may not want if you should contract COVID. So it's important for you to read this, become educated, because the more informed you are, the better informed your decisions will be. This is where you start capturing the information and telling what it is that you want with COVID-19. This would be considered an addendum. At this point, you read through this, fill it out according to what your choices are, and then you would attach it to, you sign it, witness it, date it, and attach it to your living will. This is one of a couple of forms I wanted to show you. This goes on for 2 pages, and then this form is another one, another addendum example that you can use. You pick which one suits you best, but the most important thing is pick one and complete it. Make sure it's signed, and it's dated, and it's witnessed. This one is for COVID as well. So now we turn to dementia, an advanced directive for dementia. There are different stages and phases of dementia. There's mild, there's moderate, and there's severe. And so really it's up to you to make those decisions. If you received a dementia diagnosis, this would be important to visit this and make sure you had this in place if in fact you wanted to make known what your wishes are based upon your level of dementia. And that's what this particular document is for. So read through that if in fact this applies to you, or perhaps it applies to a loved one. Get yourself educated. This is a sectarian healthcare directive. This is for a situation you might find yourself in where your wishes are in conflict with the institutional goals and objectives. In other words, the institution may not be able to honor your wishes based upon what its core values are. And this basically states that if that's the case, you want to be transferred to where you can be treated, and that treatment is going to be administered in alignment with what your preferences, goals, and objectives for your care are. This is a rider to residential agreement with assisted living facility. When you're in a assisted living facility, as an example, oftentimes I believe that they typically will transfer you out as soon as there's a medical situation, a medical crisis. They won't treat, of course. So you're now in transit with EMS. And what you're looking for here is an agreement and an understanding as to what their protocol is at the residence, and to make sure that what they're going to do is align with what your wishes are. So you become informed and aware, but this basically states what it is that your wishes are, so they know what they are, and that of course is put into your record, and you have an agreement as to what part of that they'll support. Now, the next form we're going to talk about is the Texas Medical Power of Attorney for Designation of Healthcare Agent, which is also referred to as the MPOA. This very simple form, it is you simply inserting your name right here, and then the name, address, and the phone number of the person that has agreed to be your healthcare agent. We talked about in the first of the 3 Ds, which is decide, in part 2, that how you go about picking your healthcare agent. So we're going to assume by this point in time that you've chosen someone, and this is the person that you have chosen. You put it here. This section here that talks about limitations on decision-making authority of my agent are as follows. If there are no limitations on authority, then you just simply leave this blank. Or you can write does not apply, and initial that, and date it, that notation. But typically in a situation such as this, the authority is not limited, because you really want that person to have a full range of authority to make decisions on your behalf, because you're not able to make those decisions. Some more information here, important for you to review. And then of course you have what's called a first alternate agent and a second alternate agent. Ideally, you'd have 3 people. Keep in mind, once again, to remind you that your healthcare agent does not necessarily have to live in close proximity to you. They can actually do this by phone and when they confer with the medical team and the doctor. But it's most important that if that's the case, whether it's local or whether they live far away, is that you get this form completed with them named as your primary healthcare agent. And then, of course, keep these, have these two people as backup as well. That's important. The original of this document is kept at, not necessary to fill this out. Basically, copies of the original will do. And the following institutions have signed copies. You're welcome to fill this out if you wish, but it's, again, not necessary. You can also assign a duration on which the person is assigned as your or appointed as your healthcare agent. But typically, this is left blank because it's not necessary, because they'll be your healthcare agent until you die. These are disclosure statements, the rest of this. And then you can either have this, again, talks about you have to sign this in the presence of two competent adults. And here's the qualifications for what it is that, who they can be. And you can sign this, or it can be notarized. So it's an either or. Keep in mind, this is an or. It's real important that you don't get confused. This does not require a notary. This is or, notary or two competent adults watching you sign it, and that'll do. The document now is completed and is legal. Okay, let's now move on to the out-of-hospital DNR. The out-of-hospital do not resuscitate. This is an order that you basically are stating your intention. You push your name here. Here's your date of birth. And this basically says, do not resuscitate. That's what you're after. This basically says, do not resuscitate. This is what's called an out-of-hospital do not resuscitate versus a in-hospital do not resuscitate order. That's totally different. We'll talk about that in a moment. An out-of-hospital do not resuscitate means as long as you are not admitted to a hospital, this order should cover and should be legally bind those that are trying to treat you to abide by what your wishes are as stated here in this order when it's properly completed. So basically you put your name here, your date of birth, specify male, female, and then you complete this section as well. And making sure that, of course, that you have to have your signature witnessed by two competent adults. In addition, you also need to have your physician needs to complete their part of this form. So there's a physician statement here. This section needs to be filled out by your primary care physician, or whoever your lead doctor is on your medical team, basically stating this is what your wishes are. Now, as an example, perhaps if you were, I don't know, young and not necessarily in a position of you were in good health, you wouldn't necessarily have an out-of-hospital DNR. But if you have entered hospice and you don't necessarily want to have CPR, then that would be appropriate to have this document completed. I'll give you an example. My late wife, Kinsloe, was on hospice, and exactly that, said, I don't want to be resuscitated. If in fact I have a cardiac arrest or an event, just let me go quietly and let me go without having to go through the trauma of going through CPR. My suggestion is that if you don't understand CPR, and if you haven't actually witnessed it other than on Hollywood, then I would suggest you research it on the internet and really understand what actually happens when you go through the process of having cardiopulmonary resuscitation done on you. And then also look at the efficiency or the efficacy of CPR to see if that's what you want to do. If, as an example, if you're 80 years old, frail, osteoporosis, failing in health already, this could be a very traumatic event, and the efficacy is less than 5%. That you'll walk out of the hospital in the same condition as you were before the cardiac arrest. So now you've got the doctor to sign this document, and everybody has to sign it a second time. You have to sign it a second time. your witnesses have to sign it a second time, your physician has to sign it a second time. So the idea is that you can actually sign this document in both places, and your witnesses can sign in both places, both in the first section and in this last section on the bottom of the page. And then you can go to the doctor and have the doctor sign, because the doctor doesn't require a to be his or her signature doesn't require it being witnessed. And this only section here where it says second physician signature, that's only in a very specific circumstance of working with incompetent adults, and in your case, more than likely not the issue. So therefore, don't worry about the second physician's signature. It's a bit confusing, but just don't worry about this second physician's signature. So again, you sign it twice. You sign it above along with the two witnesses. You sign it down here with the two witnesses. The doctor signs it in the physician's statement and signs it again here as well. So that is the out-of-hospital DNR. Now, how is this different from an in-hospital DNR? Well, once you're admitted to the hospital, you will need to request that you want to be, you want an a do not resuscitate order issued. You want the doctor to write the order so that you are you are then a DNR versus a full code. When you're admitted to the hospital, and up until the time that you have a chance to talk to the doctor and the doctor writes the order and the order is entered into your record, you are what's called and considered full code. So the idea is that as soon as you're admitted, it's important for you to make the request if in fact that's where you stand at that moment in time. You don't have to, but an in-hospital DNR is very different than an out-of-hospital DNR. Just because you have an out-of-hospital DNR does not necessarily mean at all that that'll be honored or respected once you're admitted to the hospital. It will be up until the time of admission, so it does cover you when you're in the emergency room, but after you're admitted, then you need to legally make another request verbally of the doctor or the nurses to get the doctor to write the order so that you can be DNR. And your room will be marked, your chart will be marked, and you'll be a special band put on your wrist that you are a do not resuscitate patient. This gives further instructions for the out-of-hospital DNR, just so you know, and helps explain how to fill it out as well. Now we're going to move on to after-death decisions, organ donation, body disposition authorization, appointment of disposition of remains, and authorization to disclose protected healthcare information. This is the form we use for organ and tissue donation here in the state of Texas. You can also fill this out online just as easily. And matter of fact, if you're going to register, you need to use this form online in order to register so that you will be recognized as a donor. I believe you can also make this known on your driver's license as well. But if you have your driver's license already stipulated this, then you should have already, this registration should already have taken place. But just in case, make sure that you double check that it is in place. If that's what you want to do. This is called body disposition authorization. This is where you basically say what you want done with your body. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be embalmed? And do you want to be buried? Your choice. You have choices as far as how you're cremated, of course. You've got flame cremation, you've got water cremation, and you can also now be laid to rest and recompost to earth. And so your body turns into the earth. So those are choices that aren't on here, but nonetheless, you can write them in and say, this is what you want. This is basically you saying what you want done with your body. The next form, and now, by the way, this one is important for, this one has to be notarized. This one has to be notarized. The next one is the appointment for disposition of remains. In other words, who is going to take care of making sure that this gets, your authorization for disposition is done the way you want it. In other words, make sure that you're cremated the way you want it to be, that you're buried the way you want it to be, you're treated the way you want your body to be treated. So this is where you appoint someone to actually do that on your behalf. Special instructions if necessary. I believe you can also appoint a first successor and a second successor. And then I think that you have, this one is also notarized. You're looking for the agent to sign and to accept the responsibility and the appointment on this document as well. But look the document over thoroughly, make sure you understand it, and then complete it and make sure it gets notarized. This form I threw in here because it's so important when dealing with insurance. As a matter of fact, you'll probably have already run into this problem. If in fact, like with my late wife Kinsloe, I took care of all the insurance issues, challenges, questions. And so when I called the insurance agent to review or the insurance company, the provider, to review different aspects of the policy, they would always insist that they talk with her first because she was the policy holder. So unless I had this document filled out and completed, I would have to get her on the phone and she would have to give verbal permission for me to be able to access her record and what was going on with the insurance policy. So this circumvents that, makes things run a little smoother. So once this is completed and filled out by the person who's the patient or the policy holder is what I'm mainly referring to, this also gives access to all your medical records too, if necessary. But this form makes it a little more smooth sailing when talking to the insurance company for the person who's talking to that provider that is not the policy holder. Okay, let's take a look now at the advanced care planning checklist, a form to distribute your advanced care directives, what a when I die file looks like, and a few resources that you have at your fingertips here now. This is basically a form that we use to track where you have your advanced directives. And the reason this is important is to track where they are, because my attitude is that once you get them done, then distribute your directives with abandon, but not without keeping track of where you've distributed them to. And the reason for that is quite simple, is that you want to change them. So you want to make sure that the new version gets in and replaces the old version, and therefore you need to know where the old version is and who has it. So that's the reason for this this chart, just to give you just a little tool that kind of helps with tracking where your advanced directives are. So when it comes time to change, because you may do these directives in 5 years from now, 3 years from now, you may decide to do something different. You may decide your medical power of attorney needs to be a different person. So who knows what the changes are about? Because we recommend you revisit your directives, ideally once a year, but certainly don't let a couple of years pass, and just make sure they're up to date and they're current and they reflect where you are in your life at that time, that they're an accurate reflection of what it is that you value most. This is a When I Die file. This is just a list of things that go in your When I Die file. Of course, first and foremost, advanced directives, and then there's a list of 20 other things that are important to have in this When I Die file. Some people will take this and make this a red folder, and it'll be in a particular place in the house that everybody in the family knows where that is. And that's really ideal, so that the person who has to take care of your estate on all the things that takes place after you die, all that information is at their fingertips versus them having to spend days, weeks, or even months trying to find all this information and collect it and deal with all the aftermath. So this just gives you a list of the documents that are and the topics to cover. It's quite an extensive list. And to tell you the truth, this came from the Beginner's Guide to the End. And Dr. B.J. Miller and Shoshana Berger wrote this book back in 2019. And it's a brilliant book. It really is really well done. The language, it's easy to understand. It's packed full of information. Highly recommend you get it if you want to go more in depth and in detail about how to prepare for the end of your life. And then what we come to here is a resource page. Resources that you can utilize now that you've downloaded the document. When you open it up in your computer, of course, all these links are live, so you can go in and you can pull this information. One of the things that you'll need to know, of course, is if you're going to have a funeral, even if you're going to do simply cremation, it's important that you understand what the cost of all this is going to be. And so the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Central Texas has prepared a funeral home price survey, which they do once a year or once every other year. And so when you go to their site, you'll actually see, and you click on the link, you'll see a spreadsheet that outlines for you specifically in the 5-county area, which is called Central Texas, every funeral home that offers funeral home services, what their price is for cremation and burial and coffins and caskets and that kind of thing. So it's important to know that you can have a direct cremation for $695, or you can have someone else do it for $3,500. So this gives you an opportunity to compare prices and to see and compare services, because it may not all be about price, it may just be about the type of services. So you get a chance to take a look at that. Now, advanced directive storage. Oftentimes people will ask, well, what do I do once I get the directives done? Where do I put them? Obviously, we want to put a set in the When I Die file. We obviously want to make sure our set is with our primary care physician and every member of our medical team, and it's in our medical record. And then where do we store it after that? Well, guess what? You can take pictures of it and leave it on your phone so that you can actually forward those documents to whomever you would like to forward them to. So this kind of walks you through how to do that. Most important thing is to make sure you don't keep it in a safety deposit box, because you can only access the safety deposit box after you've gone through probate and the executor has been given a letter of testamentary that allows them access to your safety deposit box. So you don't want to put them there as the only place. So the idea here is that you want to store them in a way that's easily accessible. And of course, you can read through this and decide that for yourself. But here's some more ideas with regards to online storage. So these are all services and companies that provide online storage for advanced directives. Even to the point where this is one I use, is called My Directives. And basically, you can actually record a video of what your wishes are and actually have an icon on your iPhone that when you press that icon, it opens up to you giving instructions via video on what your advanced directives are. So that's another way of doing this. So storing it electronically is important. Again, more of these. And then for those of you that might want to have this conversation with your loved ones and your extended family, there are some conversation starter games here that I recommend you take a look at, which is one's called Hello, Morbid Curiosity, and of course Go Wish. And these are all games that inspire conversation and give ways for you to actually begin the conversation and talk about the different topics that are important to you at the end of life. And that gives everybody a chance to engage in the dialogue and the conversation. So we're coming to a conclusion here, and I want to share with you one last point, which is if in fact you have questions along the way, please take the time to communicate with me. Send me a text, give me a call, send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer the questions that you may have. Also, if you want to go into more depth into the 3 Ds of advanced care planning, we have a complete webinar schedule on advanced care planning. We also have a robust schedule for grief education, because death informs the grief, and therefore we offer grief education as part of this as well. So take advantage of those resources. Please be in touch if you've got questions. I'd be happy to support you. Thank you so much for watching this video.